I'll tell people I'm going to look at my phone, and I don't mean to be rude. I'm not disrespecting you. I mean, no offense, but things catch on fire and blow up here.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. Today's guest is not only a global facilities leader, he also has customers in 89 countries around the world and operates facilities within 4 countries in the world. So I can't wait to get into this conversation with him. His career journey showcases a strong foundation in manufacturing, engineering, and facilities management. And it's clear he's a results-driven leader. Through his roles at his current company, he has received numerous awards, such as the Excellence in Construction Award, the Chairman's Award, the President's Award, and the 2017 New Hampshire BIA Above and Beyond Award. He currently serves as the Vice President, Global Facilities Management and Special Projects at Sig Sauer. Jeff Chierepko, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jay, never been on a show. This is interesting.
I am thrilled that you decided to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And, I'm excited because, Sig Sauer, it's an amazing company. You've got such a reach around the world here. Your career is impressive in and of itself. And, every time we've met in person, it's been dynamic. So I can't wait to talk to you about it. So given all of that, right, let's start with, through your journey, through all of your experiences and your roles, what's been your biggest lesson learned?
Biggest lesson learned. Never think that you know everything and don't just blindly follow people. I think that's kind of the biggest one. Listen more than you talk, the things that you've heard before. But I really think that, early on, I think all of us are kind of fall victim to this. We're like our kids. We think we know it. And that just always ends poorly. And I take my kind of theory is I will learn something new every day, even if it's something really small. You go somewhere, you think you know everything, and then there's always a bigger guy, more knowledgeable guy, smarter guy. So that's I think that's sums it up.
That is really sound advice. Could you give us any examples of maybe earlier on when you thought that way and how it didn't go so well, and like how you've advanced yourself and now, you're learning different ways to grow?
Yeah, a couple of examples. We have to test 100% of our firearms, and we do that in multiple locations in our factories. So we have to shoot 100 meters. So we shoot through steel tubes. It goes over in one location, it goes over our machine shop. Other locations, a little bit different. And we had, an expert in the field. I mean, the guy, anytime I visited where he worked, I would just try to pick his brain, just suck knowledge from him because he just knew so much. He had so many experiences. And he told us that we couldn't use a certain device for measuring velocity. It's a chronograph type of device. This one's called a nailer, brand name. And he said that you can't do that with tube. Nobody does it. Never been done, will never work. You'll always get too much noise or reverberation, things like that. And, I work not just with my department. It doesn't matter what department someone's in. I'll just kind of latch on and say, hey, you want to help with this project? And our structure is such that it works. We're all one team Sig. And so he looked into it, and we've been hearing this for years and years. And we talked about maybe we have to change to concrete, what other materials work. And it turns out he calls the company and they said, put a piece of white regular printer paper over it, and that's going to dilute some of the signal. It was never a problem again. We went for so many years, just that's what the guy said, and he knows everything. And, we have countless examples of that, and, question everything. I think that's what it comes down to.
That is such a start. Wow. Like just a piece of paper.
Yeah. And early on, as I'm learning it, a lot of it comes from, our CEO or COO. And the CEO told me early on, I came to him the problem. Like a lot of people do, you sit down in front of them. And he told me, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. And that's been, I've been here, this is my 21st year. That was early on. And I was like, that is just like, I've thought about that probably every week for the last, whatever it's been, 18 or 20 years when I heard it.
It's so I've heard it too, and it's like, like that's where our contribution, our team's contribution, really comes into play, right?
Yeah. And another thing that kind of struck out was right around that time we were starting our explosive growth. And he likes to sit down, gets out his red pen, and he starts drawing stuff. Usually it's a bunch of math. He's a walking computer. Guy is a genius. And he writes down all the different functions in this one particular factory or inner at the time. And he kind of like a sun or a spoke, wheel and spoke thing, hub and wheel or hub and spoke. And he says, the middle of this is Jeff. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And he said, it is. Because you have so much reach into the company. You have to know the processes, you have to know procedures, you have to know a little bit of everything. And so, that kind of stuck with me for a long time as well. Like,
wow.
I do make a difference.
Sure.
When I say I say my team.
Of course. Yeah. No, understood. To that point, you're operating in 4 countries around the world. You clearly you couldn't do it yourself, right? What does it take to lead a global facilities organization? Like, and just kind of walk us through
we're
that.
Predominantly U.S., but as time goes on, we'll get into this later with the localization. We have Made in America. Well, everyone else does too. India has a law, Make in India. And it's usually about 65% of the end product has to be made in country. But it takes a lot of, it's herding cats, it's some of the mundane stuff, but it's also how you approach people. I was in Israel for a project, and we had a partner that we were working with, older guy, brilliant. He was the head of the IDF Anti-Terrorism Bureau. He's like a part-time head of a police, like a reserve police association. That was just amazing. He's got stuff going on in Africa. He actually invented it's called the corner shot. It's a gun that shoots around corners. I don't know if you've ever seen him.
No, we need to talk about that.
And so, I'm talking to him, and we're feeling each other out, and he's being really cordial. He's known my boss for quite some time. And, from recognizing, his background, his culture, everything else like that, and respecting it, we went out to dinner, and I told him, this is in Tel Aviv, and I said, you got to meet my dad. He said, okay. And so I FaceTime my dad, check the time zones. And he starts talking to my dad. And, he and I have checked in over time. And then my dad says, hey, Amos called me. I'm like, called you? Yeah. And so Amos tells me, well, it's my dad too. I lost my dad because he's like 75 or something like that. So his dad's not his past. And so the other day, it was just kind of funny. We were checking in, and my dad says, oh, he called me. Yeah, I could hear the missiles in the background. And so I sent him a WhatsApp, and I said, thanks for talking to my dad. It means a lot. And said, you made one crucial mistake. He is my dad as well. It's so funny. But when you're working with these different cultures, like Swiss or something like that, or, India or whatever it is, respecting the cultures and coming and being honest, not like forcibly trying to speak their language in some broken, pathetic attempt. You just say, look, I'm honest. I'm American. I don't speak many languages.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that whole, you could call it pejorative term, but social engineering, respect is such an important thing, not only with your team, in your own factory, but worldwide. And, it's just that we'll probably get into that a little bit more later, but
Sure.
Communication would be another major thing, and trusting your team. So if I'm in another country or something like that, or just in another state or whatever, the only reason that I could be successful is because the team's successful. And that's, rely on your people. Don't always look to, if you hire outside, they're going to automatically be better than your guys.
I want to jump back on a couple of things you talked about, Jeff, because so the cultures and meshing with the other cultures, right? How did you personally learn how to do that? I think you kind of answered just being authentic is what I got from you. But yeah, how did that start out for you?
I think like for everybody, different experiences you've had in your life. Early on, I worked for the state, just about killed me.
Mhm.
Having to buy a loader or else you won't get your budget next year. But anyways, I was in a thing called SES, the Senior Executive Service. And so I used to have to testify to legislature. And I was pretty young at the time, so that was kind of shocking. And then, I'm having senators ask me questions and grill me and things like that. And so I got kind of comfortable working with people. But also that we have so many, foreign visitors here. But one story that, kind of add a little bit of color to it. So I was in Saudi Arabia and I'm with, Dr. Mustafa, and we have like a rapper, a business development guy in each region around the world. And so it's it's nighttime. And so there's no, obviously, alcohol allowed. I think it's still the death penalty. So you go
Mm.
back to this compound and you have Arabic coffee, and I can't drink coffee past tea, but I'm going to be polite and take it, probably won't sleep. And so Dr. Mustafa says to me, this war, isn't this crazy? And he's talking about, what's going on in Israel, Gaza, things like that. And I'm like, yeah. And we have very close ties to Israel. Our CEO's a dual citizen. We have a company there. And he says, can you imagine bombing a hospital? And I'm like,
Mm.
oh boy, they're kind of missily down in the basement. You got all those tunnels and things,
Mm.
So it was kind of like you step back and you're like, wow, I'm kind of in the middle. So, we went to a Palestinian place for lunch, and the first thing that you see as you walk in is kind of like, if you're familiar with the Chevy Museum, they had a sinkhole, all the cars fell in.
Mm.
Yeah, they have it on a loop, and the security footage is pretty cool. I used to go there once in a while because we had a facility in Kentucky. And you walk in, and it's a Lexan circle with lighting, and it shows the hole. And that's also an access port for the engineers to check on, geotech stuff.
Oh, wow.
We went to this Palestinian place, and there's the same. And there's a ladder and lights. And it was their homage to Gaza tunnels and
Mm.
killing. It's like, whoa. And then it was a few days later, I had to have a call with Israel because we're working on another project over there. And, my guy is like, you can't call there from here. I'm like, why? And then, you kind of get into the whole geopolitics thing.
Oh, sure.
Saudi was about to do normalized relationships with Israel. Then all of a sudden, October 7th happens,
Hmm.
making all these different connections. Wi-Fi is banned there. So, I had to get off the hotel Wi-Fi and be able to WhatsApp call. But it was interesting. And the funniest thing, it's not real. They're all the same. They eat the same food. The first thing a guy in Israel says to me about being in Saudi Arabia is, how's the food? Like, well, it's great. You know it. You guys all eat the same thing. Strange.
How often do you have to go over there?
It depends. That kind of gets to the localization part of it. The business development people, they've got a lot of irons in the fire. To do a joint venture or a licensing agreement or whatever it is, they need somebody that understands the process. I guess they need the jack of all trades.
Mhm.
And that's where facilities in a lot of companies. So if it's, say it's for, it was for a specific product. And I said, well, throughout our tour of this country, I've only seen one hammer forge. And if the tender is for, this specific model, you're going to need a business development guy is like, what is that? What does that mean?
Mm.
Whoa, that's like a major thing here.
Yep.
I was able to tell him, there's a lot of things internationally called offsets. Offsets are, that you have to build or make, and every country is different. It might be 65% of the actual materials. It could be 65% of the value. It could be They all have their own math, but you can add offsets saying, I will specifically use your state-owned ammunition machine gun factory, and you could load 7.62 hybrid and we would teach you. It's not necessarily part of this tender, but that could be an offset for how much you're giving that country. Because every country is the same. They want to build their economy. They want to pay their own people. Our old plan back in the day was everything would come from the United States. Everything would come from New Hampshire, Arkansas, Oregon, and the world has just changed. And it's probably not going back anytime soon. Trump's trying to bring manufacturing back here. They're trying to do the same thing. Nobody wants to be reliant on the.
There's a lot I want to go back to on that. I'm actually gonna shift a little bit though, because you and I were texting. I want to say it was 3 weeks ago. I think it was a Friday, right? And you were hoping to come home. You were planning to come home, as I recall, but you didn't end up doing that. So that's my lead into what are the challenges you face as a facilities team in your world? Can you just walk us through it? And how did you deal with it, mitigate it? And how do you put things in place to try to avoid those things in the future?
Yeah, I've had a lot of those things. I mean, anybody in facilities has.
Right.
Our industry is a little bit different. We deal with things like explosives and chemicals, and, a lot of different things. But the example that you're mentioning, I was in Nashville doing some site selection stuff for a project. And I was heading back I brought one change of clothes. It was an overnight trip, pretty quick one. I had just been there a few weeks before and got notice on the plane through text that there was an incident at our Arkansas location. And so they had tried to get it before the door closed, get my travel arranged, but the door already closed and we taken off. Landed in Boston, sidestepped 2 gates back to Arkansas. We had an incident there, and it's in the news a lot down there. I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but in ammunition and explosives, things happen. And what it proved was a couple of things. That training is absolutely critical and important. People being calm and following the procedures is critical. How you've built your team is pretty critical, those kind of things. And so once I got there, I, kind of saw what was going on. It was I was on fire, and everybody, I couldn't believe how well they had, the fire department, we had just trained, I think 3 weeks before the event. So they knew exactly what to do. And I happened to have my drone with me because I was, using it in Nashville and I had an extra battery. So I, kind of flew the whole site, checked things out. But stuff like that happens when I'm doing interviews. I'll tell people, I'm going to look at my phone, and I don't mean to be rude. I'm not disrespecting you. I mean, no offense, but things catch on fire and blow up here. And it's just, it's a fact of life. Now, what it has been in every incident we've ever had has been a testament to safety policy. And I add EHS, on other things. And that's another thing that you should jot down, that you should jump back to, is as facilities is kind of a common denominator in a factory, EHS is as well. And it's so critically important that those two departments have a very close relationship, especially if you're in, dangerous environments. But at the end of the day, our safety program, the events ended up being kind of a summation of prior planning and having, policies and procedures in place. 0 injuries. We have actually, for being in a dangerous industry, we had one of the best safety records. We just had a celebration of 3 million no lost time work hours in one facility, 1 million in another. We keep having those. They're becoming common, which is great.
And Jeff, that's obviously not by accident, right? So it sounds very intentional. It sounds systematic. What's the cadence of your training? Who does the trainings?
Yeah, it depends. It comes from, various entities. We're a extremely heavily regulated industry. So we have all of the alphabet soup of people, but also the Department of Defense, who has their own version of all the same people as well. So ATF, DCMA, which is part of the DoD, all of those people, they're constantly coming in, checking, looking for things. But, internally, we have like a lot of people do, business interruption, all those they've got a million different names. We were actually doing a business interruption training scenario. And this was a relatively new person. She was an analyst, for a business analyst, not just nothing to do with my department. But she got everybody together and she said, okay. And again, not a lot of knowledge or tribal knowledge of the company and what's happened. Okay, that we lost power here and now there's no toilets, there's no this. What would you guys do? And it was kind of funny because my guys were with me and we were just kind of like, oh, 3 months ago that happened. Yeah, we did this and this and we had it all in place. We knew what to do. We had a porta potty place on call, ready for us, generator, you name it. And she said, all right, well, that's not good because you already did that one. And she brings up another, there's a fire. Oh, yeah, that's kind of like the aluminum dust collection fire. And, so it was, and I'm not trying to brag, we make lots of mistakes.
Sure.
It's the best way to learn is making mistakes. And I've made like all, but, it was kind of, it was a short amount of time that I could sit back and say, we've really done a good job in, certain areas and be proud to see.
That's incredible. And again, not by accident, right? I mean, the mistakes were made and it sounds like you learned and corrected very quickly, or not quickly, but correctly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, if I had just been in a place that didn't grow much and things like that, and there was an explosion for some reason, I'd be shocked or something maybe, but unfortunately, it's kind of like when you talk to the IDF versus US soldiers, that's been their life. They know nothing other than war. But yeah.
So you mentioned EHS, and I will jump back to that because anyone in the facilities world knows that there's the safety aspect, there's the get it done aspect, and how do those two marry together, right? So yeah, if you could, and we've had a lot of EH&S professionals on the show, and they talked about that holistic approach. But yeah, give us your experience.
This is only my experience. It's different for different industries and everything else. Where we've been working on a primer manufacturing facility for quite some time. And primers are 1.1 explosives. They're the thing that goes in the head of the cartridge, that makes the whole process work. Extremely dangerous process. There's constantly people dying. Lake City Ammunition, which is the Army's ammunition factory, they had an explosion, I think 3-4 years ago. Hornaday just had an explosion a year ago, I think it was, 2 years ago. You've got federal, who the government is now outside their doors, white testing, for lead. Primers are very difficult to deal with. And so we want to do it with no human intervention or interaction, completely automated. That's one of the things that internally we know we're known for. We know ourselves as an engineering company, not necessarily a defense contractor or but you can't start to design a primer or any kind of explosive facility without huge involvement from facilities. We're the ones that, know the explosive quantity distance calculations, the inter-building distances, inter-magazine distances, PTRDs, all these things that come into, to play. So the chemists, they're super important as well, obviously. But you can't design the process unless you know all the requirements, which is, substantial dividing walls. And in certain applications, it comes down to the AHJ like always, but in certain applications, fire suppression would actually be more helpful than good because if you have an event, it's instant. And so now your fire protection that was never going to work now becomes missiles, for instance. And so
say more about that. How do you mean?
Oh, I mean, I've seen and witnessed a piece of CMU fly 75 feet and penetrate a building. Necessarily ours, but all of that's extremely critical. When you have, and there's lots of things like K factors and explosive overpressure walls and deflagration routes and things like that. But without our knowledge, and then bring in the EHS portion of it, that can't happen. So you can have the ops guy who knows his process, how to run it, probably didn't design the process, but that's
Hmm.
where you reach out to, professionals, SMEs and things like that. But, even if we step away from explosives, because we do a lot of stuff. I mean, we've designed retail, clean rooms, we have clean rooms, ISO 6, in Oregon for optics. That's a completely different environment, different safety things. There, you're going to worry about robots, robot training and policies around robots and all that kind of thing, and radiation because you have tritium in sites. Then you go to Arkansas, we're doing ammunition. That's more of explosive things. It's office, it's typical manufacturing, it's machining, it's things like that. And you've got retail. We have a flagship store that we're trying to, duplicate in other parts of the country. We've designed restaurants. We've designed all sorts of things. Then talk about growth. You're doing acquisitions. You're buying properties. You're buying buildings. That you could end up owning a Superfund site if EHS is not in the loop, always being communicated with. So yeah.
That's a lot of different manufacturing processes and things that you are overseeing. It's incredible how much you guys actually do.
It's so strange to know, like, you have to have, a 3-bucket sink or whatever, a 3-well sink in this state, or you can't get your coffee license, your
Mhm.
health license. Yeah, I mean, that makes it fun too. Just not being in, just metal cutting, for instance.
Right.
We built the 240,000 square foot metal cutting building. That's night and day from Oregon doing optics. There's a lot of automation involved. That's probably the only common denominator, but you just get into like really weird stuff, which makes things fun.
Hey, rock stars, if you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Coludis, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Coludis is there to make hard work easy. Visit coludis.com today to get started. Yeah, I mean, you're going from explosives to radiation danger. I mean, that there's a lot going on there. So how do you keep it all together with the H&S and facilities? Is it like, do you oversee both departments, Jeff, or you do? Okay. So
Our security and all of the machine maintenance, it grew too big. I mean, pared down, I still have like 90 people,
mhm.
but it was just too large with security and some other things. I mean, our machine maintenance guys are like 150 of them alone, just technicians that work.
Wow.
But it's because, I mean, we don't have a lot of turnover because it's a fun place to work.
Mm.
And we put a lot of effort into, like, we're great place to work certified. I mean, that takes a lot of work. You're really reaching out to your people. You're, trying to cut down barriers and have them open up and tell you what they need. But with low turnover, I've been fortunate to have people that have been with me 15 years, 18 years, 10 years, things like that. And so, that, my goal, like everyone's, is to make it so that we're not needed anymore. I get hit by a bus. It's not big. But cultivating those guys, and women, having them, giving them the leash to really just go out and prove that you want to do this. So, one of my guys, one of the best guys we've got, was an electrician, and he started programming our building automation system because he didn't like how Johnson Controls or somebody was doing it. He started importing his own graphics. Then he just took over to become the expert in range ventilation, and ended up being, consulted in all of our other locations because of his expertise. And, he wanted to, climb the ladder in facilities. And I said, all right, we'll do it. He had been in a ton of meetings with me, meetings I used to run all the time, weekly meetings. And then as I took a step back because I'm doing other things, I would check into those meetings and he sounded like me.
Well done.
But his just that go-getter attitude, that's the cream rising to the top. And so I said, all right, you're doing pretty good on this project, and it's a huge facility that we're building. Go for it. And, he's a little scared. They have to take the jump. You can't hold the
Mhm.
hand because you're actually doing a disservice to these people. If you keep people as mushrooms and they don't learn, and they have to make mistakes too. It has to be
Mhm.
okay to make mistakes. And that's the only reason that I can go, gallivant, do all these other things, which is, fun. Mhm. But I'm also helping them and making sure things are good and checking in. Hey, you know, this budget thing's got you a little bit not sure what it is. I can't, and they'll say, all right, yeah, I'm out of my lane here. This is getting
Mm.
above me. And I'm like, not really. I mean, you got to figure out how to do it at some point anyways.
Mm. Good leadership, Jeff. That's and really what a testament to I'm gonna say culture, right? Because if you've such a low turnover, that's fantastic. And it's I see that as good culture. Could you say a little more about the Great Place to Work certified?
Yeah, it's a survey that comes out every year and it measures a billion metrics. Uh, and it's all anonymous, of course. And it's how is management, what do we as a company do for the community? Do I feel safe here? All those standard questions. And you have to get above 65%, and then you can be certified as a great place to work. And you can use the logo and all that kind of thing. And it's, one more tool in the toolbox to recruit and to retain people.
Sure.
And we're getting really good feedback. It can get over the top too. Like, I say everything in moderation, doing monthly checkpoints or touch points with every single employee. Sometimes that's one of the tools that they use. Sometimes that could be a little bit, a little
Mm.
overwhelming, but now in general, it's a great program.
Yeah,
And yesterday was for this location, ice cream day. So throughout the summer, we actually have ice cream trucks and everybody goes out. We have to, have them as an additional insured. It's really ridiculous, but yeah, every single location gets the ice cream truck. They get a lot of things.
I'm gonna come by and say hi on ice cream day next time.
Yeah.
It's great stuff. I want to actually move over to the SEC because you were kind enough to not only tour myself and Paul Donhauser of Boston Scientific in the back house of the whole facility, right? But I'd like to anyone can go on the website, they can look at, the amazing videos, but I'm gonna lead up to it here, right? The first time I ever walked into the SEC in Sig Experience Center. That is, I have to share with the audience. This store is unbelievable. You walk in, it's like, Disneyland if that's the kind of stuff you like. Then, so the product selection alone, the customer service is over the top. The museum is amazing. Leather-clad lounge upstairs is gorgeous. It's a great place to have a meeting. And then, of course, the range and all the other services you guys have. So, that being said, Jeff, you gave me the backstory of how the genesis of how it became. And could you kind of share with the audience everything you've already shared with me, please?
Yeah. I mean, going back a little bit further, say about 160-year-old company. When I started, there was like 120 people or something. The CEO had hired me 6 months after he started. We had explosive growth going from, pistols, rifles, suppressors, training, optics, ammunition. It goes on and on and on. And we went from 80,000 square feet to just under 1.5 million square feet. And Ron Cohen, the CEO during COVID, had said, all right, we're not going to SHOT Show, which is our big, industry event of the year. It's like we spend about $2 million for a booth. And he said, instead of that, which we're obviously not going to, I want something that tells the history of SIG. It's a very old company. There's not a lot of, we can't really do tours at our factories. There's so many requirements for Department of Defense, background checks, etc. And he wanted to show people what is SIG. Some people still think we're like a German or Swiss company. We've been headquartered and run from the United States since 2007. So he wanted some venue, and his analogy was Yellowstone. You go to Yellowstone, you don't really know what you're looking at. You just kind of look around, whoa. And then you go into the, the little range master area and you got a ranger there that says, okay, what you're looking at and all this kind of thing. And he said, that was amazing. why don't we do something like that? I'm about 6. He said on Saturdays, Dave, the guy that runs the machine gun program, he could be there and talk about the development, of the next generation squad weapon. How did it evolve? Just kind of cool things like that. And, a lot of people have been into, a gun store or a range, and they're dark and they're dirty. And it's this old guy making fun of you because you picked the wrong gun and that's not manly enough or then whatever. And so, we wanted to go more to like our heritage being European. And I think our tagline with that is like Swiss engineering, American something ingenuity. It's kind of like a meld of the two, and German influence. So we wanted clean lines, European look, get away from both the dirty, dank place. And we didn't really want to be a gun tree club either. It's kind of, a posh, bougie place like Scottsdale, Arizona, shooting club. Very nice. But that wasn't, what we were looking for. We wanted to show people who is Sig. So you walk in, and it is more like an Apple store. It's wide open. It's bright. You can see lots of cameras, and you can see TVs that you're on. But it was, how do we tell the story? Because it's a really long story. We're still in our original building in Switzerland from 1863, and so, because it was COVID again, a lot of people didn't have much to do. We didn't lay off a single person. We kept working. No one ever went home. And marketing was available like on the Imagineers. And I don't really love designing by committee, but we did. And the great thing was everything we normally do is like 110 miles an hour while you're doing a bunch of other things. I have 7 buildings we're working on right now. And with that, COVID gave us the time to actually properly design it, actually do a programming schematic phase, design development, all that kind of thing we were able to do. And it's been one of the most successful projects. I mean, we've done 29, 30 buildings. That was the most successful one we've had.
It's a great story, and what great vision on your CEO's part, and of course the whole team. I mean,
the museum it's not just a museum; it's a showcase. It's bringing people inside, so you can go over and hit the headquarters button, and you see all the robots. Then you hit the ammunition button, and you're in Arkansas, and you're watching brass. You're watching loading and things like that. Then you hit the other button to Oregon, and you're looking at optics. I think they're adding Israel, where we have a remote weapon station, which you and I have talked about.
Yes, we have.
And you're seeing this, our gun married to a remote weapons automated system that's on like a Polaris or something. And, you tell it what the targets are. You're not in harm's way. You can even do it remotely if you wanted, and boom, 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 and it resets, and it's kind of the other cool part is, there's a video Ron Cohen has about our competitors. No one else has everything under one roof. So if you look at some firearms manufacturer, they're calling an ammunition manufacturer. They might have a history, but they're not the same team by any means, even if they're on a project together. I can, or our firearms engineers can just call Arkansas. They might even be here anyways, where I'm over there and they're always over here. And then we need optics. Okay, just call optics. And so everybody's able to test everyone else's stuff, for there. So, there's different vibration testing and things that you have to do with optics, but they're using the actual firearms going to go on, and they're shooting the actual ammunition that we make in Arkansas and send to them. So being under one roof is great, and you can't really show that. So if you do have a location and you can say, look, this is where we do this and how we do that. This is actually the process. We're more of an engineering company than a defense contract. You saw with the display of a Polaris with a 338 machine gun on it, and all the mannequins are wearing uniforms. Those are all uniforms that SIG employees wore in theater. So, it's just kind of details like that that make it pretty cool.
It's neat. And to root back to what you're saying about an engineering company, it's impressive. You walked me through the new ammunition, right? And how the components of it, and why the pressure can be handled because of the same stainless steel base. I don't know if I'm saying everything just right here, but
yeah. Or 60,000 PSI, we're talking about 81,000 PSI. And that's a lot of pressure through a barrel. Now that would probably, that would damage barrels, but not ours because they're designed for it. So again, it's not an ammunition manufacturer going rogue and then nothing works.
Sure.
I can't really discuss the Army stuff, their projectile that we make for them, but it goes through. It's almost unstoppable. It's pretty impressive. The government's idea was lethality, and why did they need lethality? And the story is, history shows, we're over in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're shooting 5.56 at people that, it reaches about halfway. They're shooting knocking off 7.62, other rounds, AK stuff, and they're hitting us. So we needed something that's far more lethal. And then even if they're in range, 5.56 hits armor plating and it means nothing. So the government wanted to, find something, and they had spent about 15 years developing it. And then, it went out to bid, and we've got a lot of the government contracts. All the services use our pistols, our carbine, our machine gun, optics, you name it. And so with that extra lethality brings headaches for people like me that, have to stop it. In fact, there's not a lot of off-the-shelf solutions for our lives here. We usually have to invent them. And so stopping some of these classified rounds required a whole new method, completely different than what we're used to. And, through Googling and an awesome team, we came up with an incredible process that had never been done before. And, we like to say that to our CEO, and he's like, you guys say that all the time. All of his teams are always saying it's never been done before. Kind of like the 365 that is, with the amount of rounds it had never happened before. So it became the, concealed carry.
So you say he's tired of hearing it? Is that the?
No, it's half joke. I mean, his slogan to us is "suck less." So
No, that's good. Motivating.
Yeah. Well, what have you done for me today? Not yesterday. Stop talking about yesterday. But no, the solution that we did, we actually just received our preliminary patent. So myself and three other guys got a patent on this method, this range method for containing and removing and separating penetrators from a media.
Well done. So as much as you do similar to other companies and facilities teams, that is absolutely unique. And you had to create something out of nothing, basically.
Yeah. And some of the people involved, they don't report to me. I thought about it like 3 weeks after it had started, and went, I should ask his boss if it's okay, but nobody cares because it's
right. Yeah. Good, cohesive culture. Awesome. So Jeff, I want to ask you, what advice would you give someone in a similar role to yourself?
Delegate, I would say. Understand that your time is precious. I don't have a lot of, I would love to have more time to work and coach, my people. And I do that as much as possible, but you have to delegate to them. And that's the only way, right back to what we were talking about earlier, is that's the only way they're going to learn.
Mm-hmm.
We had a safety guy at one point, and he was under my director of safety. And I didn't know, but he wasn't really, he's kind of holding things close to his vest for action of his job, which is the antithesis of what we want. And I found out later that this guy his growth had been stunted for years because he wasn't challenged. And I had recommended hiring him early on because I knew he had that potential, but he was stunted for several years, unfortunately. And so, we've been making up for that, but he's a little bit worried about, I don't know if I can take this on. Just got to jump and try. You're going to make mistakes, just like we talked about.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest ones.
Great advice too. And we've used the saying, like, let go of the vine, right? If you're always hanging on to it, like, you just let go of the vine, make it happen.
It comes back to training, staying calm if it's, some emergency issue, knowing your audience for different kind of things. Like, we talked a little bit about like foreign people and things like that. It's just, it's knowing who you talk to, And I try to tell my guys, I want you to be in a position to be able to talk to the CEO or the guy sweeping a room. And don't forget, we all sweep a room. If
Right.
you're just still out here, I'm the first to get a mop by. We're we like to say, leave the egos at the door.
Love that.
A little
Yep.
rambling, but trying to teach
No,
them different points.
no, it's all good. It's all like really good advice for anyone. I'm sure the audience will definitely appreciate it. Is appreciating that right now. I want to jump back to the SEC for a second because I want to showcase your team and back to the tour you were able to give Paul and I. And the fact that the front, I'm going to call it front stage, backstage, right? The front stage of the SEC is so impressive. And I want to give props to your staff, not just your staff, but all of the SIG staff. Every time I've gone there, whether it's with a group of 15 people or just myself and one of the level of service is phenomenal. Like, Jeff, it is really, really good. It's impressive. And I can be pretty critical at times of service. So
But I got to give a shout out to the design team, the engineers, architects, North Branch Construction, just amazing. I've been working with them for 26 years. But to speak to the people, I actually went there shooting with my wife and her son, my stepson, and he had a buddy come. Never shot a gun. And so I talked to the range safety officers, and they're like, okay, well, there's a procedure for that. And so, he goes in and he was a little bit worried. He was curious. And the guy, I mean, and remember, this is a brighter area. These are friendly people. This is not, you've never shot, get the hell out of here, Vietnam, the blah, blah, blah. I have all this experience. It's just like, this guy's like really working with them, breaking down any kind of, barriers that he once had. And he, shot a couple times and he said, I'm good. And we all went, all right, you're good. And then he goes, well, actually, I want to try a little bit further out. So I loaded mags and he was there for 2 hours and it was, 5% because of the facilities and 95% because of what we call human capital, the guy training the RSO. The academy is just, it's an amazing place. I learned from those guys once. And one of the things about the SEC was that it was, a huge success. I didn't know if it would be. I'm like, it's in Epping, New Hampshire. I know that Epping says it's the epicenter of the universe, but there's some to do. Not to offend any of my friends in Epping.
right.
But when we did the ribbon cutting, 48 states showed up. So it was like, whoa.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And the amount that they do, the events and all the things that they do is just crazy. So now we're looking at, other locations in the US, like I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. It's just a customer experience. But now I'm going to jump to the backstage because this is what you humbly don't talk about, right? And I will for you. I walked behind those doors and you're showing us the infrastructure and the back house and the plumbing, the mechanicals, everything that goes on.
The fun stuff.
The fun is absolutely, but it looked as good as the front stage is really my biggest takeaway. I'm walking through, I'm like, yeah, this is usually a dirty area in most buildings. No, not here. It looks so yeah, well done. Clearly, integrity to what the customer sees and what they don't see.
We have a saying, always be tour ready. We have a lot of tours, not general population, other countries, dignitaries, things like that. And we always want to be, especially the Army, all the militaries, always want to be tour ready. And that doesn't stop at the door that they can't unlock.
Mm-hmm.
And that falls into our, in the SIG performance system. We're a lean company. All those kind of things kind of mesh into it and make it all work.
Amazing. Great stuff, Jeff. I am certain people will want to reach out to you with more questions about whether it's the SEC or your foreign travel and whatever it is and your knowledge and facilities. But what's the best way for them to get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Oh, give out my email, I guess.
Whatever works for you.
Yeah, jeff.chierepko@sigsauer.com.
Outstanding. Awesome. I can't thank you enough for being on the show, Jeff. I mean, I've known you not too long now, but we've always had great conversations and you're a wealth of knowledge and experience. Thank you so much.
I love what you're doing, and that's why I'm on. I don't normally do things like this. I'm not a big public speaker and podcaster, but I love what you're doing because I almost feel like, again, back to facilities is kind of the glue that keeps everything together. We run the engine room, but I also think that sometimes it's almost considered a pejorative term, facilities.
Mm,
And it
mm.
kind of is. Why aren't we in the C-suite? We are. There's like chief of administrative services. That sounds like a secretary to me or an executive assistant. So I love what you're doing. We are finding less and less people interested in facilities. Our AFC or AFE, our Association of Facilities Engineers chapter, closed in New Hampshire.
Mm.
Young guys weren't coming out. We've rolled into the Boston chapter, which is a great chapter. So
Chapter 33.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm glad that you're doing this. No one else is.
Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. And that is why we're doing it, actually. And we do work with IFMA and AFE as well, because just growing a more robust facilities community. And like you said, get more people interested in it, right? And coming to it. So, no, thank you.
I've actually, one of the other things, I guess, lessons learned is reach outside your bubble. And so I have a quarterly meeting with my counterpart at BAE.
Mhm.
And we just talk about absolutely anything. There might be some things that come up on the agenda, but things that he's encountering that I might have seen. And we've been growing that. We've included our EHS groups. And it's just one of those things. You got to look outside your own house and see how other people are doing things. Doesn't always mean it's the right way. I've been in factories where I said, why did you do this? Well, a guy from your place came to manage it. And I said, well, we stopped doing it because it was stupid.
Mhm.
We're very anti-yes man. If something looks stupid, raise your hand and say, that kind of looks stupid. No, it's not.
Call it out. Yeah, right. That's awesome. Yeah, and look at you, networking with your peers. I mean, not even just collaborating with them, just to learn.
And it's internal too. And we were having some silo and communication problems like every company does. And so the facilities guy, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I developed a new summit. It was a quarterly summit on this specific area in happened to be in Arkansas. And everyone's like, oh, what is he doing? And I said, I've just had enough with, what are you doing? Well, what is he doing? So we have this thing. No one wanted to go. It was supposed to be an hour. It lasted 3 hours. Everyone was like, wait, you're doing that too? So I would say, it doesn't matter that maybe another department maybe it should have been ops. It doesn't matter. Just step up and create the meeting, and over communicate, because there was just so many people, like I said, saying, I did not even working on that as well. So that redundancy is just ridiculous. We just talk to everybody and communicate as much as possible.
Right back to the glue.
Yeah.
That was glue right there. Well done. That's good. Jeff, thanks again, man. Really appreciate you invested a whole, a good amount of time with us here. And I'm sure people are going to reach out. I know we'll be talking plenty. So thank you.
It's fun. Thanks.
Absolutely. And thank you to the audience. If you learned something, which I'm sure you did, if you want to reach out to Jeff, tell someone else about the show. We'll see everyone next time. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.